Hi guys, welcome to episode 11 of my Indominus review series. Warm Dad here for anybody who hasn't already watched. This week we're going to be reviewing issue 11, which is an issue I've been personally looking forward to because it's given me another new model that I haven't had yet. The original hand-to-hand intercessors were slightly different, but this one even more so. So without further ado, let's get this baby open. Unlike last week where they made a slight misestimation with the number of models, this one just says one model and all you're getting is one model, but it is a pretty cool model. It's the new Primaris Librarian. This was the one that first appeared in the Indominus box set, which also had the bikes and a lot of other cool stuff. Obviously, most of the stuff we're getting is from the Indominus box set releases. They're still available. I don't know if the Indominus box set's still available. I think that was limited run. But a lot of these models are still available in the command box. It's in the starter box set. Obviously, you get the recruit, the elite, and the command box sets, which is your 3 different sizes depending on your budget. But this guy, I don't know if this is actually any of them, but this guy, as he first appeared in the Indominus set, and he is, sorry, I'm twitching a lot there, guys, my apologies. He is a new and fairly unique librarian, being as he's the only one currently that's decked out in Phobos armor, which again we first saw with the Reavers that came out very soon after the Primaris were released. But basically, it's the lighter, faster armor that has. I always think it looks like a pair of boots. It looks like a pair of decent boots. If I show you the thing, I'll just get a bit of paper, put it behind so you can see it better. You kind of got that boot there, which kind of looks like a dwarven boot with the kind of top rolled over. You know, it's a technological version of a fantasy boot. It's a bit weird. But it does give the Space Marines kind of a quirky look. They kind of look like somebody wearing 3/4 length shorts, and as a metaler that wears 3/4 length shorts, I approve. This guy obviously is designed. Sorry, I'm going to try to chill that shit out. This guy is designed to move and sneak and go ahead of the advanced forces and use his psychic powers ahead of the front lines, either alpha striking or infiltrating, as was most of the Indominus box set. It was designed to be kind of vanguard troops, hence he has the lighter armor. It doesn't really offer any massive game differences. Wearing the light armor, it's mostly taste and stylistics, but well, it's a fantastic model. It's well detailed. It's got a lot of different stuff. For example, a lot of the armor is actually covered. If you look at here, he's wearing material over his armor, very much to reduce the glint. He's got a long cloak and also long bits at the front. It doesn't. I like it because they've managed to do a lot of the stuff you see in things like Dark Angels and things like Ultramarines. But if we look at the picture, he doesn't look particularly like he has to be a Dark Angel or he has to be an Ultramarine. They've made it very clear that this is all stealth and camo gear. He's not meant to shine. It's meant to distort or change the outline of his body, and it's meant to help him sneak. For those of you who aren't aware of what I'm talking about, one of the things that most armies that use camouflage do is try to change the way you perceive the shape, with the idea being by using different shapes, by using twigs or armor or even camouflage pattern. They're not trying to cover something up entirely. the idea is to break up the shape, because the human brain is very good at recognizing shapes. If we see the shape of a person, it stands out to us. It's one of the reasons that if you're sleeping at night and something is crumpled up and looks like a person, you can't help but look at it, and you can't help but think, what, who, where, even to the point where sometimes you might feel the need to turn the light to figure out what the fuck it is. We use camo gear and camo shapes in our modern armies to try and break that up, so that you're not instantly drawn to a person's to the shape of a person and you instantly shoot it. And that is actually something that they're following on with the camo cloaks in GW, which is nice. It's nice to see them do some research and do some stuff. It's not accurate, but it makes sense. Real camo doesn't use big cloaks and hoods. Real camo uses far more complicated and far more skilled things. But it leans towards the thing where it might be true, if you're suspending disbelief. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are a bunch of camoed army guys out there, and I don't know, because they're just so good and invisible. But it's a nice detail. You've got the sword as well, which is the standard, the classic Librarian sword with the little squiggle on it. So revealing my secrets, in case anybody's wondering, I do about 5 seconds research before every episode to find out various things, such as I need to look up the name of which set, and such as this little fact, which is this guy costs about 20 quid when bought individually. So your top saving here is about £11 and a penny, so you're saving over 50%, which is a damn good saving. He is one of the cheaper librarians on the site. I think the only librarian that's cheapest is Ezekiel, and he's like £18 because that's an old model. This guy's quite a lot cheaper than a lot of the other librarians. Well, no, he's not quite a lot cheaper. He's the same price as some. He's about £2.50 cheaper than some of the other librarians, which is a reasonable amount of saving. Here you're getting him for £8.99, which is a very reasonable price for a librarian that does not look like all the other librarians, which I'm frankly very happy about. And I was like, he's got a lot of detail, but he's also got a lot of detail obscured. He's got the little keys which Space Marines have, but the cloak goes over his armor, so you can't see the recognizable faction symbols. The hood changes the shape of his head. It's half coming off the armor here, so it's all looking very unique and very different. And because it's compared to most GW models, this is actually a very nice, very different model. A lot of the GW stuff has what I think of sometimes as an overabundance of details. They can have so many details that sometimes they can look a bit messy. Particularly some of the wackier ones. This guy is almost the opposite direction, in that he has very few complicated details. A lot of this stuff is deliberately designed to be vaguely bland. There's other bits and pieces that counter that, there are shallow details, but they give the impression of a very simplistic, very Spartan look, which I think is really nice and quite a refreshing change from some of the other GW stuff, which, as I say, can sometimes be a bit over detailed. I mean, I say this as a Space Wolf player, having seen all the details that some Space Wolf models have on. It can be a bit over detailed sometimes, but that's the joy of GW's miniatures, particularly over a lot of other companies, is that because they are so customizable, if I don't like all the detail, I don't have to put all the detail on. But stylistically, as I say, it's a different style, and it's nice to see very similar models having a very different style. This will be, I think, Librarian number 4 that I've got. I didn't intend to collect that many librarians. I think I got one with the Dark Crusade set. I got one with the last magazine, and I bought one once when my wife was doing something, and I was sitting in GW Portsmouth. She had an appointment for something, I forget what, but I sat in GW Portsmouth, chatting to the guys down there. And if you're in the Portsmouth area, go chat to them. They're great guys and girls. And I bought a librarian and put it together in the shop while I was waiting. Very badly, if I remember correctly. Anyway, like I said, you can't have too many psychers. Oh no, wait, you can. Anyway, in addition to that, we got this paintbrush. It's the dry brush. They're about £4. I don't really rate them, which is why I can't remember the exact price. This one is a little softer than some of the other ones I've got. They're not bad for dry brushing, but frankly, for the same price as this brush, which is all right, I'm just going to reach over and get a packet of brushes like this, which do the same job. And when they get fucked up, because they're like a fraction, well, it's like £2 for a packet of brushes, and it'll have like 5 of these one in, and 5 brushes that I can use to base coat in. And if you're going to do stuff that wrecks brushes, and dry brushing can wreck brushes, personally, I tend to go for shit. This is a much better brush technically. But I don't find it does any better job than some of the cheaper brushes. Which is not something I say about a lot of GW's line. Most of GW stuff is good, is better, and you can see where the money goes. As I previously said, I tend to lean towards Army Painter because I just like Army Painter. But when you're paying the difference between some of the GW brushes and some of the Army Painter brushes, you can kind of see where some of that money goes. In terms of actual performance, I find the Army Painter ones work just as well as the GW ones, which is why I tend towards them. But GW brushes are usually fantastic. I usually wouldn't ever say to somebody, don't get a GW brush, because they're great brushes for the price range and for what you're doing with them. Yes, you can get better brushes. You can spend £50 on a brush. But unless you're painting some amazing standard stuff, then you're not going to get much difference out of it. If, like me, you're a reasonable or good painter, and I can paint well. I mean, I've always considered myself not quite Golden Demon standard. I can paint stuff that looks really nice. I can paint stuff that looks really well. But if I entered the Golden Demon, I wouldn't win anything. You can find that spending £30 on a brush or spending £5 on a brush isn't going to give you too much return. It's like buying the HD version of a movie you like when you don't have a HD TV. The one except, so I tend to like GW brushes. I think this is the only one, but I think this is the only exception. It's not bad for what it does, but what it does is a dry brush, and dry brushing can be very harsh on dry brushes. So I think it's the one thing where I'd say don't bother spending your money on this one. Get a bunch of cheap brushes and then spend your good brush money on your fine detail and your detail. And your base coat brushes. I mean, this will last longer than this, but the price difference is you'll get 4 or 5 of these for the price of one of these, and 4 or 5 of these will last longer than this. And I haven't found a difference in the job that I do. In fact, the bristles on this one are slightly finer than the bristles on this one. And for what I do, where I like to have kind of smooth color transitions, I actually find I prefer the cheap shit. This one's made by a company called Bouldermere, but I'm sure this isn't their best work. It's the kind of thing that if you're in Britain, and I'm sure there's American equivalents over here, if you go into shops like Wilko's or The Works, they'll have packets of them on the wall for very cheap prices. That being said, being as you've already saved your money more than twice over with this, having this as an extra brush is absolutely not a problem. Yeah, there you go. A quick brush review in addition to everything else. Right now. Sorry, I'm under a lot of stress at the moment and it's really showing. I don't mean to be twitching so much. Obviously, signed on the inside by our chapter master Ian. On the first page, we've got Librarian in Phobos armor, stealthy psychic warrior. The Librarians are the Space Marine psychic warriors. And they've used that quickly twice. They use their potent warp talents to empower their brothers and destroy their opponents. Librarians who serve in the Vanguard formations wear Phobos armor and specialize in psychic disciplines of stealth and misdirection. Yep, that's pretty good. It's showing you again, he's got a camo cloak. He has a psychic hood, which is still worked into the back. He has Librarius keys. Every librarian apparently gets keys that let him into and out of the libraries of their chapter and allow them into the sections where it has knowledge on psychic laws. From what I've read of novels, there's also there's hidden genetic scans. They just walk up and turn a key, and it's just a key, and it won't do anything for anybody else more than it will do for them. But there's genetic scans, there's weight sensors, there's servitors watching, and if somebody who's not a librarian tries to get into the library, they'll get death, pain, thonging. You got the Force Sword. Almost every librarian can or does carry a Force Sword. I've never been a big fan of the GW Force Swords. The shape is a bit meaty, although this one's actually avoiding the slightly expanded tip that we can see on this one. And they have that weird squiggle all the way up, which I've never been entirely sure what it's supposed to be. It's kind of a repeating pattern, but it kind of looks a bit almost too simplistic to be something. Hugging my librarian. But you sit on every librarian sword. In all fairness, I'm probably not going to use it anyway. This sword's actually a bit nicer because of the way it's been built than some of the previous ones. But as a Space Wolf player, I'm going to cut that off and replace it with an axe or a spear or something a bit more brutal looking, just to bring this guy into the Space Wolf kind of feel. It's showing you the two Librarian badges. Librarians display the icons of Librarius upon their armor. These symbols are usually born on the knee pads and the right shoulder pads. So you're not going to see it, but there are your two things. I mean, you've got a human horned skull, perhaps representing demonology. All the dangerous nature of their powers, and you've got a skull with a halo, perhaps representing the shining light of their psychic insanity. You've got another little blip down here telling you how awesome it is to be a librarian. It's worth noting librarians are fairly rare. It's hard to get. It's hard to have too many. It's hard to have an abundance of librarians because a lot of chapters don't trust them, and b, very few psychers and psychics have the strength to be a librarian, and then the physical necessities to actually pass the Space Marine trials, which are not guaranteed, meaning that most chapters have a handful of librarians at best. Some have more. I know the Dark Angels tend to use a lot of psychers as their inquisitors and that. Some have less, with some chapters refusing to have librarians at all, and others boasting something slightly different. Again, going with the Space Wolves, because my favourite army, the Wolf Priests, the Rune Priests, often claim that they are not librarians, that they're in fact something different. And if you look at the way their powers work, there is something to that. All the rituals and all the weird stuff they do has served to keep them separate from the warp. And render them slightly less susceptible than some of the people who, well, than some of the other chapters whose librarians studied psychic powers as intensely. With 1,000 Suns, for example, getting very much into chaos without even realizing it. Some of that really being down to Magnus, because, you know, when you find a being the size of the continent who says, man, I can fix all your problems and it's totally free, you should trust that gift horse and not look it in the mouth. It's one of the things people don't actually realize is that Magnus was under the influence. When they say Magnus did nothing wrong, he was actually under the influence of Zench from really very early in the Crusades. Massive amounts of mutation in his Marines meant it was difficult to keep his 1,000 Suns at any reasonable number, and a problem not just faced by his chapter, but he dealt with it by making a deal with Zench. He didn't know it was Zench, and he didn't know it as Zench at the time, but he traded his soul and the soul of his chapter away, or sort of his legion away, fairly early in the Crusades, and it does kind of taint everything he sort of does from there. Partially because he didn't know what he was doing, partially because Imp didn't tell him what he was doing. But anyway, we've got a nice battle record here with a list of the powers. You're not going to have access to every single one of these powers every game. You're going to have to use some of them, but every time you achieve something with a psychic power, you can record it. You can record the name, you can record the rank, a lot of other cool things there. And then on the back you've got Space Marine Librarians. This guy, who seems to have a double chin and quite a dodgy tash. He looks like a bad primary school teacher. I'm just going to read the blurb here. Each Space Marine chapter has its own Librarius, a group of warrior mystics and scholars. The Space Marine Librarians have spent decades mastering their psychic talents to lend their chapter wisdom and fearsome power in battle. Yep, that's pretty true. Space Marines have been using psychers, as has the Emperor, from literally the beginning of the Great Crusade and even earlier. There was obviously a ban after the Council of Nicaea, but Gilliman and others reversed that ban, and Russ just ignored it, because the same as there's no wolves on Fenris, there's no psychers in the Space Marine chapter, or in the Space Force chapter either, apparently. There are a lot of four-legged things that growl a lot. When you look at why they did it, you can kind of see why. The Emperor was worried that his sons were getting too far into psychic abilities at a crucial stage, and it could blow up in his face. And after he was dead, and it had blown up in his face, there was no need to keep the psychers out of the battle any longer. So you can understand why Gilliman went, well, the Emperor used psychers, and whilst we could have gotten by under his leadership without psychers because he had a plan, he's not around anymore. We need every weapon we can get. So you can get why they did that. And the psychers they get to be librarians are amongst the best trained and the most stable. Psychers are collected throughout the Imperium, things called the black ships, and you've got like 10,000 psychers on a black ship, of which one, maybe two, might test well enough to be used as a psyker, and the rest get either killed or often taken to Terra, where they get sacrificed 1,000 a day just to keep the Emperor's psychic power topped up. So, which is also one of the things why a lot of people are convinced if the Emperor ever does reincarnate and come back, he is going to be insane, because he after 10,000 years and 1,000 psychers every day, he now consists of so many souls that have been tortured, destroyed before their moment of death. How the fuck is he going to be sane? Anyway, there's some cool stuff there. I digress. Next, We've got the ranks of the librarian. You've got the acolytes, the lexicanum, the codicers, the epistolary, and the chief librarian. Obviously, many of those, well, you have a few ranks in Space Marine chapters. It isn't like they're not like the churchy things they're saying where you're going to have like 50 acolytes and like 25 lexicanus and then 10 codicer. You might have large amounts, you might have tiny amounts. It depends on your it depends on how much the individual chapter trusts librarians and how much they can afford to train them. Because obviously your acolytes are still are a very dangerous thing. I'm going to read a couple of these to you. Potential librarians are drawn from those Space Marine recruits who possess strength of will and great psychic power. They must go through decades of brutal learning to harden their will before they can become full librarians. So whilst you might have dozens of acolytes, whilst you might have a dozen acolytes or even dozens of acolytes, a lot of them are going to take training and some of them aren't going to make it. Next, you've got the Lexicanum, who acolytes who completed their training. They're expected to fight alongside their brothers in combat. They also write detailed reports of the battles. The Codicers are Lexicanums who excel in their duties and promoted to Codicer. They're responsible for evaluating and approving reports written by Lexicanums and finalising their entries. The Epistolaries, second only the Chief Librarian, the Epistolaries are amongst the most powerful librarians. Their primary role is as communication officer. They possess the ability to telepathically send messages across vast distances, which is awesome. And then you've got the Chief Librarian, who is the strongest and most psychically powerful librarian in a chapter. Librarians in this position draw upon centuries of study and personal experience to offer their individual tactical advice to the chapter master. And if that makes these guys sound badass, it's because they are. And there are still some stories where chief librarians of chapters have been possessed by demons and taken over by chaos. So, psychic power is an amazing weapon, but also an incredibly dangerous one. It goes on to describe the psychic disciplines, which are the different flavors of psychic power. You've got pyromancy, you've got fortune telling, you have other basic disciplines that any space marine librarian can call upon, and then a lot of chapters or a lot of individuals have their own unique disciplines, like the Tempestus discipline of the Space Wolves again, which allows them to access a lot of weird stuff and a lot of kind of weather related stuff. They can call forth lightning, they can call forth storms. It also allows them to do other things like enhance senses and stuff like that. In all fairness, having used Space Marines a lot, I'd often run two psychers, but I'd mostly run them out of the standard list because some of the rerolls, some of the prescient abilities were just the best abilities. I've got to look through 9th ed abilities, which I'm hoping are going to be in here, or 9th ed abilities, which I'm hoping there's going to be some in here, and we'll get some in later points, but that should be cool as well. Next, we've got some more Necrons. Eldritch artifacts. Let's read this bit. The armories of the Necron race are filled with technology that predates the very birth of the human race. They are as lethal as they are ancient. I almost read that as indecent. The Necrons use a lot of stuff that is so old that the rules of the universe and the availability of tech and resources were so different that they're nothing like human weapons. That's one of the things about the Necrons is they are completely different and alien when compared to humans, although at the same time have basically human skeleton bodies. It goes on to a brief discussion here, saying that they're so advanced that only the Eldari even begin to compare. So that's all pretty good. Next, got a bit going on to melee weapons of the Necrons here. Melee weapons are favoured by Necron nobles and their bodyguards, who wage war according to the ancient Necron traditions of honour. Many of these weapons are seen as much as symbols of status as they are potent instruments of destruction. But yeah, we've got some really cool stuff here. You've got hyperphase weapons, void weapons, war size, and the Staff of Light. Hyperphase weapons work by vibrating across dimensions, allowing the edge of the blade to slip through armor. Void weapons, they flicker in and out of existence. When the blade strikes a flow, it causes the victim's molecular structure to break apart. That's pretty cool. War size are energized blades. These weapons allow them to pass through armor with minimal effort. A lot of armor piercing. And you've got the Staff of Light. Oh dear. This power staff is also capable of firing short-range blasts of energy. So that's all pretty cool. Oh god, Tourette's going. Sorry guys, Tourette's has really got on my nose. You've got the how to build here, obviously with clipper safety. Once knew a man who slipped with his clipper, cut his own head clean off. So that's all pretty good. With all the layers and some of these newer models are getting, it is actually really worth looking at these, because a lot of these guys are, they're not like one printed lump. Things like the cloaks, which in previous models used to be kind of joined onto the model by just a lump, and you'd kind of have to paint a bit of it black so it didn't just look weird. They're actually completely separate parts, so just putting it together in the right order does make it a lot easier. How to paint a librarian. Here you've got them painting the librarians blue. It is worth noting that the colours for librarians, even amongst non-Ultramarine chapters, are often blue as well, as it indicates they're a librarian. It's the equivalent of painting hazard strokes on your weapon. A lot of librarians get painted blue as a matter of course, so you can easily identify a librarian. So that if you start feeling like if the air around you starts feeling a bit demony, you know who to shoot. Different chapters use different colours for librarians. Some use red, some use blue, but it usually varies greatly from whatever their chapter's colours are. This guy's been painted blue. I assume he's going to be an Ultramarine librarian, because all the paint jobs are. But whatever you decide to do is going to be cool. And there's a lot of nice details on this librarian, which you can actually see starting to pop out as they're painted. Next, Psychic Assault. You've got your mission briefing. It is worth noting that the Necrons don't have any Psychers, and neither do the Tau. They have some equivalents, but they have no souls or present in the war, so they can't access psychic powers. A master of psychic powers, the Librarian stalks the corridor of the Necron crypts in search of his battle brothers. As he attempts to navigate the obsidian depths, canoptic scarabs scurry forth from their hiding places, intent on devouring the Librarian before he can bring his warp powers to bear. Apparently he can summon a warped bear. Anyway. So basically, you've got a Librarian versus 3 canoptic scarabs. I wonder if that's going to play out weird. Again, they've got 3 canoptic scarabs here, which makes me wonder if the mistake they made in the last couple of weeks' issues is going to affect how you can play these. Because we actually got 4 canoptic scarabs. I'm just hoping that they're not going to assume that you have 10 Necron warriors. Otherwise, it could unbalance the games a tad. Not a lot, to be honest, but it'll be interesting to see. We've got the rules here. So it looks like you've got the Librarian versus a Royal Warden and some Canoptic Scarabs. Librarian's got a reasonable movement of 6, 3+ weapon and ballistic skill, strength and toughness of 4, wounds of 5, which is a solid thing, and 4 attacks. He's got a bolt pistol and a force sword. It's worth noting there are other force weapons, and most of your codexes will tell you what the different force weapons do and what their different stats are, but they all pretty much do similar things. And he's got Psyker. This model may manifest a psychic power in your psychic phase. It knows the smite psychic power shown to the right, and they do have the smite power here. Psychic tested 5+ is required to manifest this power. If manifested, the closest visible enemy within the units within 18 suffers D3 mortal wounds. Smite's actually quite a nice one for character killing. It kills 3 enemies in a unit, which isn't a bad number, or it does D3 mortal wounds to a character, both of which obviously can't be saved or countered. So that's some nasty wounds there, particularly when dealing with some badasses like the Royal Warden, who only has 4 wounds, but it does give the Psyker some fairly solid options. The Force Sword is a melee weapon, user +1, armor penetration at -3, and D3 damages. So that's a fairly solid marine killer. The Royal Warden has a save of 3. The Canoptic Scarabs have a save 6, so they're not getting any saves against this dude. It also explains mortal wounds in here, which I don't think they've covered much, but some weapons inflict mortal wounds. Each mortal wound inflicts 1 point of damage on the target unit, and they are always applied 1 at a time. And no saving throws, not even invulnerable, can be made against mortal wounds. So that's pretty cool. But like I say, you've got the ability to do D3 mortal wounds, and then you've got 4 attacks each. You've got 4 attacks with a Force Sword. Each one is doing D3 damage, giving you a potential 12 damage in 1 turn if you really max it out. And obviously with the -3, you're not getting standard armor saves, so you've got some pretty cool stuff. It also has a brief explanation of flying for the Canoptic Scarabs, which is nice. And there you've got a picture of the Librarian shooting smite out of it. Librarians obviously get access to more abilities. They're just giving you smite at the moment. But they've also included in the turn phase the psychic phase. So you've got move and psychic and then shoot. I think that's a change. In some of the iterations, the psychic powers went first, but that's because you had psychic powers that could help you move and run. I'd imagine being as running comes after the movement phase, and in the assault phase, you can use psychic powers to enhance people's runs and things like that, and their weapons, and then you've got your shoot phase and your assault phase going. And we got more of this move, shoot, charge, which is fairly solid. Going all the way to the end, and then we go obviously what is now the standard internal bump. Okay, now the bit I know some of you are waiting for. Next week we have got 3 sets of paints: Agrax Earthshade, Canoptic Alloy, and Screamer Pink. Obviously Agrax is a wash. Canoptic Alloy is a layer, and Pink is a base. If you're not sure what the difference is, it's primarily the thickness of paint. The washes are already watered down and come in a larger pot because they expect you to use a lot. You can still water washes down further if you want. The layers are meant to be used in small amounts, so they can be watered down a little bit, but you don't need to water them down a ton. Whereas the base coats tend to be the thickest and also tend to take the most watering down because you're going to be painting entire models in the same color of layers a lot of the time. Sorry, bases a lot of the time. That's what a base is for. You know, this one, for example, is called Screamer Pink because it's meant to paint pink horrors. And Zentian Screamers. Next, more guys. We have already had a few of the Assault Intercessors. This one seems to have 5 more, which makes me very happy. They're awesome. I love them and I want them. The magazines themselves. Next week's issue 12, which comes with the paints, is also going to have paint both your forces. It's going to have some more paint instructions, and it's going to have new rules for heroes. Issue 13 is going to have the Assault Intercessors, obviously, Origins of Necrons, and new fight phase rules. So there's that to look forward to. It's run on a little on this one. Or this one's run on a little. Partially my Tourette's, partially because of my brush review. But I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you guys next week. Obviously, there's not going to be any more prizes this week, giveaways this week, because I'm throwing them around, because I'm keeping this one. Next week is paints. Week after that, it's more Space Marine which I'm going to keep. So we'll have to see what comes after that. But once I get more Necron stuff, I will resume in giving it away to you guys, because I don't need it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and all those things. And I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram as well, just occasionally sharing stuff. So if you want to engage with me on there as well, that's where I am. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this, and goodbye.